So, as many of you guys know, I make a lot of Indian dishes, and here I'm going to show you how I make my Indian paneer. It's actually fairly easy. The first thing that you need to do is get yourself a heavy bottom pan. It must be heavy bottom. And then you'll want to put in at least a gallon of whole milk. Preferably I use raw milk and then I boil it myself. But you can also use just regular whole milk from the grocery store. Just make sure that it has not been UHT pasteurized. That's pasteurized using ultra high temperature. That somehow breaks down the proteins oddly, and your cheese will resemble sawdust. The curds will resemble sawdust. Then I also have a muslin cloth here and a colander in a pot, and then I have 1/3 of a cup of lemon juice, the same kind you get from a lemon, the little plastic lemons. I'm not using anything special here. For this at least. You could use fresh juice, but the point is to actually not have any of the flavoring. This is just purely for curdling. So this milk has been brought up to a boil, as you can see, and so we are basically right where we need to be as far as getting this to go. Now I will use about 1/4 of a cup of the lemon juice and then reserve the remaining amount just in case we need a little bit more. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise your paneer will taste like lemon juice. So you can also use lime juice, it doesn't really matter, but you know, you actually have to use a fair amount if you're using that. You can also use vinegar. I'd say you probably only need between 1/3 as much to half as much as you do with lemon juice, but you know, I'm kind of more of a traditional person. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and add the lemon juice. I'm going to reserve some of that. And we're going to see this probably start to separate here pretty quickly. And I don't stir it super fast, because if you do that, then your curds will start to kind of clump. And it looks like my temperature might have been a little bit low. You really got to have this basically right on the edge of boiling for it to curdle. Now I'll be able to save this, but you really do want your milk to be all the way up to temp, right at the verge of boiling. I can feel it starting to curdle just a little bit. You can start to see some of the curds here, but you really want it to be much hotter than this temperature, and you'll get better results. So there we go. I'm actually going to go ahead and add the rest of this lemon juice, because I don't think I'm going to be able to get it to curdle fast enough. There we go. And that's exactly what we want. You can see that that happens very quickly at a certain temperature. There's just a separation of the curd from the whey. That's what this other liquid fraction is. That's called whey, for those of you that didn't know. So that's what Little Miss Muffet was eating when she was eating her curds and whey. Now we can turn this all the way off. We don't need to go anymore, and this will break down, and I can just continue slowly moving this just enough so that it doesn't burn on the bottom of the pan. That's really the primary reason why we're doing this. And again, I'm using raw milk, so these curds are going to have some interesting flavors, or some interesting colors, I mean. Sometimes they are a little bit yellow in color, although probably by now these curds will be mostly white in color, because we are getting near the end of the season. During the springtime, when the grass is really fresh, that leads to the milk having sort of a yellow color, or the curd has a yellow color mixed into it. So now I'm going to go ahead and move us over to the cloth and put this in. I've kind of rigged up a deal, and I'm going to go ahead and pour my mixture here into the muslin cloth. And this is very hot. The steam that's coming off of this is incredibly hot. And you can see all of the curd falling off into the cloth. And as you can see, I didn't really burn too much to the bottom of the pan, but you will get a little bit when you do this, no matter how hard you try. So some people will rinse this off. I actually don't do that. I just take this and kind of ball it up into sort of a little bundle, and then I lift it up. And remember that this is very hot, so you definitely don't want to burn yourself. And muslin cloth is all I'm using here. I don't use cheesecloth. Now this is the whey. This can actually be used in place of chicken broth or other things. Here's what I do with it. I just dump it down the drain because I don't really have any purpose for it. So kind of wasteful, but that's what I do with it. So, and then to get the ball rolling here, I'll use cold water and rinse the outside of the rag and get a little bit inside too. That just drops the temperature, but you don't want to get this too cold. Ooh, and that is very hot. We don't want to get this too cold because it will begin to cure, and we want to have it flat before we cure it. So I'll go ahead and continue to rinse this a little bit. And we'll continue to squeeze this out. I don't get too crazy with squeezing it out because you do want moisture in your paneer. You don't want it too dry. It does have to be a little fluffy. Otherwise, honestly, it's not very good paneer if it ends up being too tough. So if it's like regular cheese, it's probably too tough. So there's no fermentation to this process. It's really very simple. So this is the ball, the curd, and I can probably even hopefully show you a little bit what it looks like in there. And we'll go ahead and we'll wind this up. And then what I do is I take this canister and I take the same heavy bottom pot that I was using before, and I turn it upside down. And then I set this on top of that, like so. And then we twist this sideways and lay it down flat. So I'll flatten this out a little bit, and believe me, this is still very, very hot. And I'll squeeze it out a little bit, just by hand, and then I'll take this muslin cloth and cinch it down. Now this is still quite malleable, so we can go ahead and take this pot and set it on top, and then I'm going to run and fill this up with water on top.